Hello, fellow HSPs. Today we're going to talk about how do we tell somebody about our trait. My name is Julie Bjelland, and I'm a psychotherapist that specializes in the trait of high sensitivity, also known as sensory processing sensitivity. Part of what I hear from a lot of HSPs is that they find it difficult to tell people about the trait, and I've gotten a lot of requests on how to, of asking how do you tell somebody about this trait. So one of the things I want to start with, though, is that we need to come from a place that has acceptance ourselves of the trait. I think part of why it is so difficult for some of you to talk about it and share it with others is that there's a part of you that thinks that there might be something wrong with the trait, with having the trait, something wrong with you, as if it's a weakness. I think that most of us as HSPs have experienced that feeling in the past of that feeling like maybe there's something wrong with us about being different. I certainly used to feel that way before I completely understood it. So really, for me, that's the first step, is that we ourselves have to really be educated and aware of what this trait means and what it's like to have this trait. Remember, this is not a disorder. This is a trait, just like eye color. And there is many positives to go with it as well. So I think it's really important to come from a place of self-acceptance and then to go to a place of educating somebody about it, rather than a place of, oh, I'm about to tell you something that's wrong with me. We want to express it as if this is something that's really interesting and something that you're teaching them about. So that might sound something like, have you ever heard of the highly sensitive person? And then based on their answer, you would say, like, if they haven't heard of it, then you'd say, well, it's a trait that makes up about 20% of the population. And there's a lot of really interesting things about it. There's both positives and challenges. And I really wanted to tell you about some of it because I'm actually excited that I've learned about this trait. Would you be open to that right now? So what we're doing with that is that we're wanting to share something that's important to us when they are open to it. So if you're really asking for their presence so that they're able to really listen to what you're saying and have that kind of interest. If they're kind of like, oh, I don't care about that, or I'm not interested in that. If they have any kind of reaction like that for you, you're feeling like they're not interested, clarify again and say, it's actually really important to me to share this with you. And I'd really like to have you listen to learn about it, because I think it explains a lot about me, and that's why it's important to share it with you. So that is a great place to start. And we might want to say some traits. We might talk about the DOES acronym, and I've described that in some of my other videos. That is about, we see that in all HSPs. We can say things like, there's about 70% of HSPs are introverts and 30% are extroverts. So it's actually not the same thing as introversion, extroversion. And the DOES acronym describes part of our experience that we take in a lot of information in our depth of processing. That stands for the D. The O is for overstimulation, because we get overstimulated when we take in so much. The E is for empathy and emotional activity. And so we happen to be very we do experience our emotions in a magnified way, and that's both positive and negative emotions. And then the S is for sensing subtlety. So we have sort of an advanced ability to take in, for example, nonverbal cues that up to 85% of the population cannot take in. So we actually have access to a lot of information in a very intuitive way. And that supports us in so many ways. So there's both challenges and negatives with this trait. There's both challenges and positives with this trait. And some of the positives are that I'm very intuitive, empathetic, very compassionate, We tend to feel very deeply for other people, and being sensitive to our surroundings, we often know what people need before they even know it. So that's a very big positive in a lot of ways. Some of the challenges are that we can be very overstimulated. That's one of the main parts of our trait that is the most challenging, is that we tend to need a lot of a downtime, for example, to process everything, because we're such deep processors. It's almost like having a supercomputer brain that's taking in all kinds of information. I like to imagine that a non-HSP, somebody that doesn't have this trait, might take in about 3 tubes of information brain-wise, whereas an HSP might take in 50 to 100 tubes of information, and that can certainly be overwhelming and overloading. And so we need a certain kind of self-care to be well. We need more downtime in general, more unstructured time, and we need processing time. And that means that we might need to take time to ourselves during gatherings in groups, for example. We might need taking some quiet time in our rooms by ourselves while we're able to process things. We kind of go through a phase of processing as HSPs. We need to process deeply, and then we also need to do rest and restoration after that to fill up our tanks. So there's a lot of information out there about this trait, and I'd be happy to share more with you. And that's when you can kind of, refer to some websites. There's also a documentary called Sensitive, and that is something that you could watch together that kind of dives in a little bit deeper. But that's a good start to sharing. So you might want to say, thanks a lot for listening. I think there's going to be times when I'm going to want to share more about the trait with you as we go on, and in a kind of more about some of my needs too that might be a little bit different than the majority of other people's needs, and that might show up in different ways. And so I'd love to share some of that with you as we go along. So that's when we kind of share more about it, depending on how much time you have and what kind of interest that person has at that particular moment, how present they are with you. But the goal of this is that you're doing education. Remember that you need to have an acceptance in order to educate in a way. So how you project the information is important. If you're projecting it as education, then that's something that they're going to take in as sort of a matter of fact. Oh, that's interesting. If you're projecting it as there's something wrong with me, that's going to create an effect too, that they might not feel a sense of acceptance. So I really think that that's a very, very important part of it, is to be able to accept it yourself. And there's lots of good resources for you in doing that. I have an HSP resources page that I can add to link to this video, and I'm also creating new videos describing the trait that might help you, that might be things you might want to share. And I also want to hear from you. Let me know if you found this helpful. Let me know what you might need. You might want to check out my book, Brain Training for the Highly Sensitive Person, Techniques to Reduce Anxiety and Overwhelming Emotions. And I have some courses online too that I teach HSPs that help manage some of the challenges, like our overly activated amygdala that often puts us in the fight a lot. So some of these things help to reduce stress and anxiety a lot. There's a lot of great tools out there. So I hope this was helpful for you. And you remember to take really good care of yourself out there, okay, HSPs? We need you thriving in the world. Take care. Bye-bye.